Hello and welcome to What the Tech from Boast AI, where we talk with some of the brilliant minds behind new and exciting tech initiatives to learn what it takes to tackle technological uncertainty and eventually change the world. Today, I am pumped to be joined by our buddy Taylor Del Giudice from Quack. Quack is a prospecting platform that makes cold calling easy for sales teams at tech companies. Their platform enables users to call multiple prospects simultaneously, empowering reps to speak to 2 to 3 times more prospects per call block, while syncing seamlessly with leading sales engagement tools. It's a great model that I know the team at Boast is testing out ourselves, but there's also fantastic people at the center of the business. As Taylor has caught up with our team at Collision, FounderFuel Demo Day, even Startupfest over the past 2 months, and we've had a blast each time. I'll leave it to Taylor to give us his take on what a busy summer it's been for the Quack team, his experience working in the startup ecosystem, and what's on the roadmap for Quack. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Taylor.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on, Paul.
Awesome. Happy to be chatting yet again. So I guess before we lead into the Quack, I want to hear more about you. Tell us about yourself, your background, how you got into the startup space, where you're based, and what got you here?
Yeah, so we're based, I'm really proud to be based out of Calgary, which is not a typical tech startup place to be based, you know what you'd say. Sometimes you get like head nods, you're like, oh, you're from Calgary. But we're based out of Calgary. I had grown up in Vancouver though, and so that's where I had originated. Being the tech scene, obviously very buzzy tech scene in Vancouver. And I had the privilege of working at 2 awesome tech startups based out of Vancouver and Victoria. And that's kind of where I got introduced to that world when it came to B2B SaaS, especially. And that's where Quack kind of lives. But before that, for me, growing up, I was super into tech. I mean, I was a kid, like, what was it, back in like 2010, watching like the Apple WWDC like videos they would put out, and even when Steve Jobs was up there talking about the new iPhones and whatnot. I've loved tech since I was a young kid. Always wanted like the new stuff that came out. Wasn't always able to get it, but always would love to see it. So that's where kind of things started, and then it spurred into me wanting to work in tech, and now being in tech from my own business standpoint.
That's awesome. You brought me back. When you said 2010 was when those Apple like stand-ups were happening.
Yeah.
Like you, I was watching them back then. I didn't have access to any of it. I think I got my first iPhone maybe 5 years after that, but
yeah.
That's awesome to hear. Now, this is a huge boon for sales teams. Did you have a background in sales? Was that kind of your like inroad into the B2B SaaS space, or was it more just kind of getting involved in those startup communities?
Yeah, so I was an SDR at the 2 companies I mentioned where I worked in Vancouver, Victoria. I was an SDR at both of those companies. So sales development representative, people that don't know, those people that are making the cold calls, sending that first initial email, kind of doing that little grunt work, or sometimes, those ones that people say like within the company, like I would never want to do that role. That's the type of role an SDR role is. And so I started there when I first joined into the companies I was working at. And that's where I kind of learned about what is now where Quack lives, which is, like you mentioned, around helping SDR teams cold call more efficiently and be able to talk to more prospects. That's where I learned this big issue within the SDR community and what is needed to be able to help those SDRs. So
yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's kind of the job no one really wants to dive in on, but it's also where a lot of folks in the industry get their start too. I mean, that's how you kind of learn how to talk to the people and then learn the problems that eventually you build solutions for. It's a problem we have on the Boast side. We want to do so much, but there's only so many hours in the day. And as with any scale up, like Quack, like Boast, we're aggressive. We really, really, really want to meet those like mile high goals that we have for even just interacting with prospects. This is a program that if we could 2 to 3x our outreach on a per call block basis, that would be a game changer for us. So very excited to see that you guys have that on the roadmap as well. Now, going into kind of what we've worked with you guys on in the past is your shred claim, your R&D, but tell me more about the actual innovation that goes into Quack. What are some of the unique differentiators about the platform compared to others in the space that make this such a unique solution?
Yeah, so what we saw within the space, as I was sort of where Quack was born out of, is myself and Jake, who's one of the co-founders here. We were both SDRs at the same company. We were looking around for a solution like Quack, And what we found was a lot of tools that weren't very accessible to our SDR team, whether that was through budget or just through their offerings that didn't make sense. And we were just looking for something that allowed us to dial more prospects, get those conversations going. And that was really it. We didn't need all these bells and whistles. We didn't need all these extra little things that were kind of unnecessary to us. And so with Quack, we were just like, why don't we make something super simple? Why don't we make something that fixes this main key issue that we're having as a team and possibly other teams? And so we went and spoke with a ton of other, like over 150 SDR teams, just to see, like, do they have the same issues as well? And we found that everyone did. So when it comes to the key differentiators, what we really saw is we thought we'd scale back the product compared to our competitors. We thought we'd scale things back and just say, hey, let's look at just the dialer and be just really good at a dialer instead of just focusing on multitudes of other things. And so we didn't want to do that. And so one key thing is that we've really focused on the dialer. And then on the other side, we've made it a lot more accessible for SDR teams. So if you're an SDR team, typically you already have multitudes of other tools on your tech stack. You have, your outreach or sales off. You have, Salesforce or HubSpot. You probably have a data enrichment tool like a ZoomInfo or Apollo or whatever the case is. And those cost a lot of money. It's not super cheap to have those type of tools. And so we didn't want to be adding on something that costs a ton of money to be able to have. So we decided we would make this as accessible as possible. And we are lucky to have our price under 3 digits, which a lot of other companies can't say about their product. And so we wanted to do that to make sure that more teams that are not 1,000-person companies, maybe companies that are a lot smaller, or even startups that don't have the budget and don't have the time to be able to call more prospects. Those are the two biggest things, really just the key focus on the dialer to really make sure that that's the best and be much more accessible for SDR teams pretty much everywhere.
No, that's really cool. And I think you tapped into a couple different points there that are, I think, good advice for founders generally. First off, when you had said you would talk to 150 SDR teams to kind of get to the root of the problem that you want to solve here. And rather than casting the widest net and going from 0 to 100 with the solution out of the gate, you went to the acute issue that you could actually have an impact for, that the target customer would very quickly see a return on, and you executed. And that is really, really cool. I know that we really harp on the community aspect of what we do here at Boast. And that's really how we built our product too. We're like, okay, what's the most annoying part of your shred claim? It's getting it in the language that the CRA is going to actually respect and understand and claim it back, but also understanding the product itself, which means saddling up with those founders and getting well versed without taking too much of their time. So I just love that there's that shared ethos about really tapping into your customer community to make the product the best possible product it can be, more than an MVP.
And honestly, that's all you really need. I mean, look at Slack. For the longest time, Slack was just like a way to communicate. There wasn't all these extra things like huddles and Canvas and all those extra things. That kind of came later. They just really focused on being able to help teams communicate better. And so that's your thing. It's like a lot of companies that are successful or at least doing something really good. You just focus on one thing. That's really all you need to do is start, at least. Like over time, you can add extra things in. But really, if you're not solving a key issue, then you're not really building much for anybody. You're kind of just doing a bunch of random things and hopefully something sticks. So, yeah.
I love that you used the Slack example too. Somebody mentioned Slack for Business the other day, and it brought me back like 10 years. And I was just like, oh yeah, that thing that wasn't really great at any of the many things it promised it would do for me at that point. And today, I mean, every job I've had since has been Slack, because it really zeroed in on what the issue was. And then as they had that runway, when they brought the customers in, then start tackling stuff, but not just add-ons for the sake of add-ons. Bringing it back to kind of the startup community that you work in. I mentioned earlier, we met you guys through FounderFuel. Katie and Lisa were some of our early guests on the podcast. Hopefully I haven't worn out my welcome, but they are an amazing asset and resource in the community. They've connected me with a lot of members of the cohort and their team before. How did you find FounderFuel, or how did they found you? What's kind of that relationship look like today?
Yeah, it's so funny. I was just out for dinner with Katie last night, kind of talking about because obviously it's coming to a close, at least like the in-person sessions and whatnot are coming to a close this week. For us, how we found it was honestly I'm pretty sure just through a LinkedIn post. I can't remember if it was through Katie or just through someone reacting to a LinkedIn post. And I was just like, oh, like I don't even think I had heard of it because then the last cohort was in 2020. And so they took a few years off. But before then, they were like every year back to back to back to back. And for me, I wasn't like really into the tech scene from like a working standpoint in 2020. I just gotten out of school. And so I didn't really know about it. And then I came across it, just applied. And we ended up getting into the first interview and then the second. And then we had to come and look around, do the in person. And, it was really cool just to end up, like, I remember getting the phone call from Katie because we had gotten a phone call the weekend before because they did their choices and let everyone know. They were like in between like a bunch of people. So we weren't even like fully accepted in when a few others had already been. And so we got like a tentative, like when she called me, she was like, it's not good, but it's also not bad. And I was like, okay, well, where are we then? And then by the end, she's like, okay, like I'll give you a call. And then when I got the call from her and said that we were in, I was like, oh, this is like super cool. But also I was like, I didn't know really what was happening because I didn't like us as a team. Like we're the youngest company in FounderFuel. We only incorporated as a company like in February. So it's like for us, we were only like 2 months old at the time. And so it was really insane, really cool to get in and really be an accelerator for us. Like there's so much stuff we learned and had to do that we may not have done as early as we've done now.
That's so awesome. Honestly, seeing how you guys presented yourselves at demo day and the pitch that you gave from the stage, you wouldn't know that you guys were just born out of February. That's actually when I started at Boast. So it's really fun to see that like in such a short time, the difference that you guys have made. And a great accelerator FounderFuel was. I think that really speaks to their efficacy. They got you on the stage with Harley from Shopify. I mean, I digress. It was a great event. Now, I know you've also worked with Boast. We did talk about your R&D and your shred in the past, but could you shine a little light about just what the experience has been? I know that we've been a squeaky wheel at all the events cornering you guys to say hi. How has it actually been working with us to get your shred clean and to work on all of that? It's probably still a work in progress too, which I fully understand.
For us, it's like building the partnership of like understanding one, being able to help from the SDR standpoint and being able to help you guys do better from prospecting or whatnot. And then on our side, being able to get insights more into what shred credits are. It's obviously not something that from a standpoint as a founder, if you're coming on and looking for shred credits, it's like you're going onto a government website, that's the shred credits, and you're like, okay, cool. Like that doesn't really help me, get these. And to have access to be able to, have that help to be able to get these credits and to be able to have that access to what Canada offers for startups, because I really think that there's a lot out there for Canadian startups versus, companies that are down in the States that don't have access to programs like these. Access to these is kind of like, you should be doing that no matter what. For us, being able to learn through Shred from the team at Boast, be able to understand how it affects us as a company, when the right time is to do so, how to make sure we're prepared the best for it, like in the insights of like when we have our first employee or even, paying ourselves to that extent, like what things we need to be doing to make sure that we are able to prep ourselves best to be able to get those shred credits and not lose, basically free value that the government's able to give us. It's been huge. We're really, blessed to have your team be able to support FounderFuel to then, support us as a company in total.
You hit on a couple points there too. I'm based in the US. I'm in Boston. And while Boast is working on both sides of the border, learning about everything that's available in Canada has been incredibly eye-opening. The government is in the business of supporting innovation up there, which is a very honest statement. I think it's easy to say that state to state. We have different tax policies down here. I think some states are obviously a lot more friendly, and it also gets a lot more industry specific and vertical specific, like biotech, come to Massachusetts. Can't really speak to anything else beyond that. Whereas up in Canada, again, you got Shred, you got your IRAP. And also you've got those tech hubs that are emerging in unexpected places. Like you had said earlier too, you're very proud to be based in Calgary. We have an emerging team up in Calgary. I'm blown away actually to see how many startups are coming out of Calgary. I was working on a blog post this morning that was looking at CBRE stats about emerging tech startups, and Calgary is booming. I think it was something like 61% more tech jobs in the past 5 years. I'll have to gut check that stat, but that is not, and that moved you guys way up the list on the top 50 in North America too. So you're not going to be alone in that pool. It's very much an emerging market that I think is really cool. And I love to see it. And I'm glad we're on a team that's really supporting companies like Quack Quack. I'd love to know what's next for Quack on the roadmap. What do you guys got on the calendar for the next few months? What are your goals for the next year? I know you and Jake are working very hard today, and I know you had mentioned that maybe first employee up on your roster.
Yeah, first hire onto the team. And on the other side of that, we have a lot of things on the product side, other integrations that we want to get done. Right now, we're with Outreach and soon to be done with SalesLoft, but we have other awesome integrations with other CRMs complete. And then some really cool things on the dialer. I'll kind of leave those till like the end of the year, but it's some awesome things. So some cool innovation that other dialers don't have. And then we are looking into thinking about how can we incorporate, because we don't use buzzwords when it comes to our dialer. Like we don't say our dialer is powered by like AI or anything like that, because it's not. And a lot of those dialers aren't, to be honest. For us, we do want to figure out how do we incorporate that into how you're prepared for a cold call with an actual dialer. We're just working on ways and brainstorming ways to incorporate that into the dialer, the prospect pages when you get a connected call and whatnot. So that's a big thing that we're working on and figuring out how to incorporate. And then we want to completely redesign our product as well. Go to our website. You can see a live demo without having to actually speak with us and go through it. You can kind of click through our product. But we completely want to redesign and make it even better. And that's a big thing into what we're doing as a company to make sure that we're kind of aligns back into how do we best support our customers. And I think redesigning and putting a new design out that maybe is a little bit easier to navigate or whatever that may be, or have the right information in front of you is huge as well. So a lot of exciting things on the roadmap. And all of it has to do with just making our customers' experience way better and helping them book more for their company. So, yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah. And from a marketing perspective, I love how simple the language you guys use on your site is too. Not simple in a negative way, just simple and I know what I'm getting. It is explicit the value I'm going to receive here. It's just optimize. You guys don't load it up with jargon. You don't overload it with buzzwords. I think we had mentioned too back at Collision, every company had AI either in their prop or they had it in the title, literally almost every company. So it's good to hear that you're being honest about it. It's not that there isn't intelligence in the back end, but you are just getting to the heart of the matter and the solution at hand, not burying it under jargon, which I appreciate. And I think your audience will appreciate too. Your sales guys, you can read, you can smell it. So you know when it's good. That's awesome. So I guess final question before we take off. What's your take on the current state of startups? I guess as one started in 2020, what I guess are the headwinds? What are some advice or maybe strategies you'd suggest to other founders who are also in this scale up growth phase that you guys are in?
Yeah. So the one thing that I found, which me and Jake actually found very interesting when we were even at like Collision or talking about the startups is like a lot of them I don't want to say don't think about sales, but I don't think they realize that's what goes into the sales process and bringing in, executing on your pipe gen and building your customer base. I think a lot of companies, as you're building your product, making sure that you're always talking to customers or potential customers, getting those people into your pipeline is huge and putting a lot more pressure on that. And I think a lot of companies don't, and they kind of sell to their friends or sell to people they know right away, which is great to get quick wins. But if you're not able to sell someone you've never talked to before, you don't know, I don't think you really know exactly if your product can be sold until then. And so I'm seeing a lot of companies not do that until later on, like a year and a half in or 2 years in, until they've actually sold to someone completely random. And I think at that point, if you had sped that up to, even at our point, 6 months in, a year in, if you have a product that you're selling, try and do it, because that way, can I sell this thing at this point? Because this is the worst your product's ever going to be. And so if in the future it's only getting better, then now that already someone's willing to buy it. So that was the one thing I found really interesting as we were talking to startup and other companies, even companies that had done a seed round of 15 million and they still hadn't really figured that kind of stuff out. And it was crazy to me, but that'd be the biggest thing. Outside of that, I think just something that you'd mentioned around the AI thing. Don't just do AI for no reason. If you're using AI, maybe just that you use AI within your company to speed up how effective your engineers are or how your sales team are or your operations side. You can use AI, but it's don't just say it for the sake of saying it, because in reality, it's you don't know if the way that it is right now is like the craze of like how like NFTs work. And maybe it's just like something that's there. And it obviously is something that's here to stay, but it might not be to the same extent. Like right now, if you're just an AI company, at some point there's going to be a few winners and not everyone's going to win. And so just doing that for the sake of doing it isn't really going to help you long term versus just building an actual business. And if you happen to have AI, that's great, but it can be like the forefront. But yeah, no, those are kind of the biggest things.
And that point too about building a business, not just a product too. You don't want to have to backtrack in a few years when AI might go out of vogue when you're throwing that on branding too. Like that's something you have to be mindful of going forward. But those are great tips. And I think, again, that focus on sales, it harkens back to that customer focus that you guys had out the gate. That's how you know what the product should be and where you need to bring it to. So if you don't have that kind of sales mindset from the start, like you said, where are you going to be even after that seed round if you're not actually solving an acute problem that customers are buying, if you can't sell it to a stranger? Taylor, this has been fantastic. It's been great to see you on Zoom. I hope to see you in person again at one of the events I'm sure on our shared calendar coming up.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Looking forward to seeing you too. I love seeing the Boast team. So
sweet.